Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, Rabbi.
So it says the tour over here, Benohagin Bashkenaz B'Tzarfat. So he says the custom is in Germany and France, She'en Bevarchin Kesholchim Me'ir Le'ir. They don't bless Gomel when they go from town to town. Shelo Chivu Ela Be'olchem Midbarot. Why? Because they only obligated you when you're going in the desert. Teshchiche Ba Chayot Raot. Why? Because over there you have some, right, the wild animals, the steam, and you have robbers. And that which it says in Yerushalmi, that all the roads are assumed to be dangerous. They only said this regarding the Tfilat HaDerech, right, which is the prayer of the traveler. So it says because when it comes to traveling, you have to request. אבל ברכת הגומל במקום תודה יתקן. But he says when it comes to Gomel, this was decreed in the place of the Todah. So what does that mean? There's an offering in the Bet HaMikdash called Todah, which is the Thanksgiving offering. So this was decreed to come in its place because since we don't have sacrifices today. Okay, great. So that's that. I think we can go with Yosef here. So it says, but Yosef, there's still a little bit more too we have to read. I'm going to go back there 1 second. But then it says in the tour, so it says also regarding the sick person, Katav Rabbeinu Yosef. Says this rabbi, right? As we mentioned before, that we're talking about a sick person who is bedridden. But if he just has a headache, as we said, or he has a stomach ache, whatever it is, he doesn't have to really bless Gomel for that. Ravad also says this, So he says not only that, but he says it has to be something which is internal injury, which is dangerous. But the Rambam Zal Katav, he writes that the Bechol Derech Bechol Choli, so it says it really applies to any travel or any sickness. We have to thank anyway. The Garcina Yerushalmi, because it says in Yerushalmi, all the roads are considered to be dangerous. Also says in Aruch like this, but even if he just has an ache in his eyes, or he has a headache, he has to bless on that too. So he says that's the custom in Spain. Okay, interesting. So that's the end of the chapter in the tour. So now we'll go back to Bet Yosef. Okay, so says Bet Yosef, I call Divrei Rosh. So he says it all comes from the Rosh. This lesson of the tour here. Perek Aro'eh. Where is this in this perek? והתוספות גם כן כתבו שם דברי רבנו יוסף. So it says the Tosfot also wrote this words of the Rabbi Yosef. Okay, fantastic. So then he says, regarding the Rambam that we just mentioned, אינו מבואר בדבריו אלא דממה ששינה עורכי המדברות. So he doesn't agree with the understanding of the Tur in the Rambam. He says that, it doesn't really say what he's trying to convey over here. Except that regarding the ones who were traveling in the desert, Hamur Begimar, which said in the Talmud, Bekatava B'makom B'koma B'pek Yud, and it says, in the 10th chapter, Holchet Rachim Mashma Debechol Holech Derech Kamar. So it says, when it talks about the travelers, it's talking about every traveler. Omina Lamad. And from there he learned, Rabbeinu Decholet Nitapa, that a person who was sick and got healed, the whole Choli Kamar, it's talking about any kind of disease. Ve'efshad de Ramban Garsinan Benun. So it says, could be, that here it should say Ramban instead of Rambam. Shekach Katav B'Sefer Torat Adam. Because that's what he wrote in his book, Torat Adam. He says, that's not only a sickness which has the danger to life, but also it's not only internal injuries. Rather, he says, as long as he's bedridden, that's really the main criterion. So he has to, and he got out of bed, so there he has to thank Hashem, shedomek kemi she'elu legardom lidon. So he says this resembles to a case where they're talking about here about the guillotine, where they chop off his head, boy. Okay, so it's like they took him up to the guillotine. Right. So in other words, what he's saying is like this: that when a person is ill, he's in danger, and when he's bedridden, that means that things could get really complicated, right? There could be complications there, and this is the reason why. That he has to thank Hashem for this. He has to bless. So this also applies to all the travelers. Leodot, they have to thank. The Rashba also says this. And he concludes there. So he says there's no difference between one who has constant aches and pains. Which comes consistently on a consecutive basis. Or something which is not really so consistent. So he says something which is consistent, on the contrary, it's even stronger. So he says, even though, many times, there's a miracle, he gets a miracle, and he's saved from this. Mina Shamaim, from heaven. Rachamu v'lav kol shata melchish nisa. So he says, but not every time you get a miracle. So you do have to bless Hashem for saving you from this predicament. Okay, great. What else we got here? One more piece. Yes. So I'll read what it says here. Mashkatav Rabbeinu the Gasina Yerushalmi, and that was Rabbeinu said, the tour that it says in Yerushalmi, Kol Drachim Becheskat Sakanahem, that all the roads are considered to be dangerous. And so he says, Eni Odea Ma Melamdenu Shekvar. It says, I don't know what he's trying to teach you with this. שכבר כתבו למעלה, כתב שבני הצרפת מפרשים דהיינו לעניין תפילת הדרך דווקא ומצד. So he says, because it was already written above. So why is he saying this again, twice, what's the purpose of that? And then he goes on, and he wrote that that the rabbis of France, they explain this. They know the Inyan Tfilah Taderech. They're talking. They say it's talking about Tfilah Taderech, right? The traveler's prayer. Dafka umatzati sefer shekatuv bo. So it says, I found a book which is written there. The Garcina Yerushalmi, that it says in Yerushalmi, Kol hacholaim becheskat sakana. So it says all sicknesses are considered to be dangerous. Hem veyeshar meod b'nei. So it says, to me it's very clear. Tehashta maite raya Yerushalmi. So he says it brings a proof from the Yerushalmi. B'chol choli tzarich leodot, that you have to thank Hashem for any sickness, any illness, whatever. Like it says in the words of the Rambam, why? Because all illnesses are considered to be somewhat dangerous. That's only regarding the Gomel blessing. So it says it's possible that he wanted to learn from here. The same also applies that all the pathway, all the roads are considered to be dangerous. And regarding the Gomel blessing, Tamar, the Chevan is talking about that, referring to that. The Chevan the Tarbayu Bachat Dishnak Mitnu, because since they were both taught in one language, just like we say that all illnesses are dangerous, same thing with the traveling, right? All the roads are dangerous. Okay, great. So a little more here. So it says, Katav Rab David Abu Drehem. This rabbi says, so he says, right, that now the custom is that we do bless, Gomel, when we go from town to town, And by the way, this is our custom, the Sfaradim. That's how we do, So if you go from one town to another, if it's a 72-minute drive or whatever, you do have to bless Gomel for this. So, like, what's a classic case, right? You go from, I don't know, whatever, right? Dallas to Houston, right? That's a long drive. So, you gotta make say Gomel for that. All the more so, if you're going on a plane, right, and flying from one town to another, you do have to say Gomel for a plane, for a plane flight. Do have to say. So, but the Ashkenazim, they do say Gomel for flights, but we Sfaradim, we say even for drives from one town to another, as we said, right? 72 minutes. Okay, great. So then he moves on here. Ramban, that's what the Ramban says. Says Bahag, Kashesh lo lelech parsa or yoter. So parsa, he says, right? When he's going parsa. So what is parsa? As we said, 72 minutes is parsa. Omer tfilat haderech. So you do say tfilat haderech, right? Aval pachot mi parsa. But if it's less than parsa, eno omra, it doesn't say. Shmamina desvilale. So you see from there that he holds the shiur derech parsa have, right? So therefore, you see, right, that the duration of the trip is going to be 72 minutes. That's that's the criterion. So 72 minutes is not really so much, And we the Sfaradim, by the way, we even have this rule, even if you're coming back, it's going to be 72 minutes altogether, back and forth the trip. As long as it's like one night, right, or one day, you have to bless on that too. So, we're pretty much we do it very often, this kind of thing. So, like in Israel, for instance, if you drive from Tel Aviv to Yerushalayim, it's not really 72 minutes, it's like a half-hour drive, 40 minutes tops, right? But if you're going back and forth, right, then it could be already 72 minutes or more, very easily, so then you would have to bless. All the more so if you're driving to Haifa, right, or to Eilat, those are even further away. So Tveria, right, those places, Golan, those are very far. So you definitely got to bless over there. Okay, great. So yeah, remember that. Let's move on. So says he concludes over here, but Yosef. So as we said, right, halachically speaking, what is it? If it's less than 72 minutes, he doesn't bless, right? That's the bottom line. Hagomel, kedivri abahag, linyan tfilat haderech, right? Regarding tfilat haderech. So what do you see from here? That the rule for tfilat haderech and for gomel is the same. So when you drive, 72 minutes or fly, whatever it is, right? Or take the train or whatever it may be, and you go from one town to another, you do have to say both, right? Filat haderech and also hagomer. Let's see Shulchan Aruch. So says Shulchan Aruch here, the Ashkenaz v'Tzarfat, it says in France and Germany, En mibrachim kolchim meir leir. They don't bless, as we said, right, when they go from town to town. That's the custom of the Ashkenazim. They don't bless. שלא חייבו אלא בהולכות למדברות, תשכיחי בית חיות ורעות וליסים. Because they only obligated when it comes to, going in the desert, whatever. בספרד נוהגים לברך. But in Sfarad, right, in Spain, the custom was to bless on that. From town to town, right? Going from Madrid to Toledo, right? Whatever. Whatever it may be. Okay. So, all right, Barcelona. Oh, okay, there you go. So, מפני שכל הדרכים בחזקת סכנה, right? So it says, because the roads are considered to be dangerous. ומי הוא לפחות בפרסה אינו מברך, right? But if it's less than parsa, right, as we said, parsa is 72 minutes. So if it's less than that, ואם הוא מקום מוחזק בסכנה ביותר. But he says, you know what? If it's considered to be like very dangerous, that place, especially dangerous, right? That area. Then if it's less, even if it's less than 72 minutes, right? You still bless anyway, because there's a lot of danger going on there. So I remember, that was a custom in Israel, by many people, which is that if you go in the territories, where there's a lot of Arab villages there, Arab towns. So if you pass through those areas, they used to say, you have to bless because of the danger that's involved there in the territories. So nothing much has really changed. The territories are still dangerous, sometimes even more than it used to be. So therefore, it does change the whole equation when you go in places like that. Right, so I guess if you go to Mexico, right, through those places where the cartels are over there, same thing, right? Those cartels are very dangerous. You pass by there, you never know what's going to happen, right? So you may have to bless over there, even if it's less than 72 minutes, something like that. Okay, great. What else we got here? All right, that's good. Let's go to the next one. There's another Shulchan Aruch here. Uh, so it says Bechol chol yitzarech levarech, right? So it says you have to bless for any sickness, any illness. Afilu eno choli shel sakana, even if it's not really like something life threatening. Velo makkah shel halal, and also it's not internal injury, right? It just Ela kol she'ala lebita v'yarad. So what's the criterion? If you were bedridden, right, and you got out of bed, you do have to bless, right? Let's say it was just a flu or something. So people who have a flu, they go to bed. You know how it is, right? They're in bed for a couple of days, so they have to bless gomel when they finish with the flu. But if you just got a headache or something, some sinus, sniffles and stuff like that, you don't bless on that. Because you're still functioning, right? You're still working, you're still doing your thing. That's not really something major. Okay, great. So what else we got? So he says because any illness, right, is like there's a danger for your life in with illnesses. If you're bedridden, that means your life was sort of in danger. You know, you guys know, right, that people die from the flu all the time. This happens very often. There are statistics about this. Like I don't know what it is, whatever it is. Like 15,000 people die from the flu every year. God knows, something like that, right? People do die from the flu. Lo aleinu. All the more so from COVID, right? We had so many deaths, millions of deaths we had because of COVID. Shem Yirachem. All right, so you get the point. אין הפרש בין שיש לו מיחוש קבוע או לזמן זמן ובו שאינו קבוע, right? So he says, but on the other hand, right, if you just have like an ache, or pains, it doesn't really matter, whether it's consistent or not consistent, we don't bless on that. So it's not the issue of the aches and pains, it's more the issue of being bedridden. That's where the criterion lies there. ובין שאינו קבוע, right? יש אומרים, so says the Rama, דאינו מברך רק על חולי שיש בו סכנה. But, the Rama brings the other opinion we saw, right? Which is that it's only like for dangerous, illnesses, right? In other words, they're life-threatening illnesses, basically, right? כגון מכה של חלל, right? For instance, like internal, injuries, things like this, right? Okay, but we don't paskin like that, right? That's what we said. Okay. But it does say here that that was a custom in Ashkenaz, in Germany. This is the way they did it over there. Okay. By the way, did the Rama live in Germany? Where did he live? So the Rama lived in Poland, so when he says it was a German custom, he's not including himself in that custom. He's talking about Germany. He lived in Krakow, Poland, the Rama. Okay, whatever. It's all good. Let's go to Tet. So it says here, Tet, Katav Rav David Abu Drehem. B'Shem Rabbeinu Gershom, right? So these rabbis, Bar Shlomo, right? He wrote the name of Rabbeinu Gershom. So yeah, we mentioned this already before, right? That you don't bless gomel for miracles, right? Only for illnesses and stuff like that, traveling, being in jail, as we said, right? All kinds of things like that. This is what it says in this book. Oh, so let's say, right, he passed by, a dilapidated wall, right? Or let's say he went over a bridge, right? So what happens is, when you go into dangerous places like that, they say, right, that they mention his sins, they accuse him, like, during those times. So, in our times, the bridges are much more safe. But in those days, bridges were like very wobbly. So, they could collapse very easily in those days, they were not very strong in those days. They're not very stable. So that's why he's talking about a bridge. Our bridges, on the other hand, right, they're pretty, stable. I mean, relatively speaking, it's all relative, but anyway, so Yivarecha a gomel. So he said, then you should bless gomel for that, if you were like in a dangerous place. Or shavar after he passes by. Yesh lomar dechiman dedavar ktsatu katzarhu. So he says there we can say that since it's something relatively short, לעבור מהרה, to pass quickly, אינו נחשב לסכנה כל כך. So it's not really so dangerous. So maybe I didn't say it right. One second. Okay, let's move on. I think I got it right. So it says, "Katab od yesh omrim she'arba'a bilbad tzrichim leodot." So it says, some say that only those four that they mentioned, right, in the Talmud, the sages, only those four have to bless gomel, but not anything which resembles that, or don't do comparison, one to the other. Don't try to say, well, yeah, it's the same thing, it's don't try to parallel them. It's not the proper way to look at it. Okay. יש אומרים שהבא בלבד צריכים להודות, אבל האחרים שבירכו היה בברכה לבטלה. But if other people blessed, right, besides those four categories that we mentioned, it would be a blessing in vain. וכן פסק רבנו, right, Sham Tov, says that's what this Rabbi Paskin, Pelcho, oh, that's his name. What nice name. Look at this, right? His name is Rabbi Shem Tov Pelcho. Okay. Pretty catchy name. B'Shem HaTosot, the name Tosot. The Elu Arba'a Davka, he also says, right, only those four people. והוא הדין בכל מקום שמזכיר התלמוד. So he says the same thing also applies to any place where the Talmud mentions mispar, right? Like a number of things, categories. In other words, it means to say only those categories and no more than that. It's a precise count. Okay, great. So this was in the name of Rabbeinu Gershom, right? Okay, Rabbi that was read him. Interesting stuff. So then he says, Aval Rivash katav b'tshuva, but the Rivash says, that which is said, right, that four people have to bless this gomel. Do we say, right, it's only those? So therefore, if let's say a wall, collapsed on him, or he was gored by an ox, right? So whatever, one of those bulls, ונגיחותיו, וכיוצא בהן, things like this. בניסים כאלו, אינו חייב לברך. But those kinds of things, according to this opinion, we don't bless, right? Because they're not enough those 4 categories. Or נאמר דכל שכן הוא. Or maybe we can say, right, on the other hand, maybe it's all the more so, right? If it's a bless on those 4, all the more so on these 2. Maybe we should look at it that way. So that's the question that they brought to the Ribash. Teshuvah, so he says, the answer is like this. So he says you do have to bless on those, right? Those are other things. So he says, because you can learn from the theory over here, right? The concept here. Right, which is what? That, why do we bless on those 4? Because there's danger. So any place where you have danger, which equals more or less those dangers, or even more, then you do have to bless. That's what he's trying to say, the Rivash. So he says, therefore, if he met up with some lion, right, in the forest, so that lion, wanted to eat him for dinner, and he got saved, right? Even it says, even if it's just a city, im ganavim baolo, right? Let's say he was, some robbers came, right, to rob him in the city. Im shodadei laila, right, or bandits, whatever. I mean, some man, he was saved from that. So it's things like this. All the more so, he says you have to bless on those things, right? Because they're even more dangerous. These predicaments. Oh, okay. So he says, then why did in Talmud they only mention those 4 things, right? Because they come from the verses, right? That's why. Where? By the way, where these verses come from? From Tehillim, right? Which Tehillim I'm talking about? Yodu la'Adonai chasdo, right? That one. Thanksgiving one. Thanksgiving Tehillim. Right, so he says, why they mention those 4? Because they're very frequent, that's the thing. They're very common. That's why. But it doesn't mean exclusively those 4. It also could mean others as well, which are similar or even more severe. Okay. So let's see what else we got here. Says all the more so. He says if he had a miracle, he was saved from death. Atzma, right? So it's because they also made another blessing, right, from miracles. So in other words, he's telling you that all the more so you got to say gomel in those predicaments. Baruch she'asa li nes b'makom hazeh. V'chol sheken שמיד שניצל צריך הוא להודות כדרך 4. So all the more so he says that when he's saved, he has to give thanks, just like those 4 things. שצריכים להודות ולא שיפטר מברכת ההודות ברכת שעשני נס. And don't try to think, right? He says, just because you're blessed for the miracle, right, you're also absolved for the gomel, right? Not this, 2 different things, right? One doesn't preclude the other. That's what he's trying to say. שעשה לי נס ושכיבו ולברך כשישוב ולעבור במקום ההוא. ואולי לא יעבור שם לעולם. So he says maybe he'll never pass by there again, that place where the miracle was made for him, whatever, so we're not really sure if he's going to bless that blessing again. Even once. But Gomel he has to bless anyway. That's what he's trying to say. So he says, don't bless that blessing אלא ודאי נראה שברכת ההודעה מברך אותה מכל מקום. So says the Rivash, bottom line, right, is that you have to also bless Gomel in these cases. So we see, right, two different opinions here going on. According to the first opinion, right, you don't bless Gomel for other predicaments besides those four that are mentioned in the Pasuk. But according to Rivash, you have to bless, right, for other things as well, which are similar or more severe. So the Bet Yosef seems to conclude with this opinion, but let's see in the Shulchan Aruch, right, how he paskins. I'm not really sure, 100%. Let's see. So it says over here, Hane Arba Lav Dafka. So right, you see, right, he paskins like the second opinion, the Rivash. Says those four, not only those four, the Huadin Nami Lemisha Asanasones. Same thing also applies to somebody who had a miracle. Kegon Shenafal Lav Kotel, right? For instance, let's say the wall collapsed on him. Or let's say he was, right, he was gored by a right ox, by a right bull. Or right? Or let's say, right, the lion came to eat him for dinner. Somehow he got saved. Oh boy. Or in ganavim bao bulo, right? Or let's say, right, there was, he was accosted by robbers, right? Whatever he was attacked. Im shodadeh laila minitzol mehem, and he was saved from that. V'chol kiyotze b'zeh, right? Things like this. Kulam tzrichim levarech hagomel. They all have to bless gomel, he says. So he passes like the Rivash, right? Very clear. And then he brings the other opinion. V'yeshorim, some say shen mevarachim hagomel ela ane bar davka. That we only bless gomel for these four cases which are mentioned in the pasuk. Yodul Adonai chasto, right? That's the pasuk, on Tehillim. Okay. What else we got here? But tov levarech belo askat Hashem malchut. So he says, you know what? Since there's a machloket, he says it's good to do without the name of God. Wow. So in other words, that's very interesting, right? So in other words, according to the simple reading of the Shulchan Aruch, he passes like the first opinion, but in the end, he kind of backtracks a little bit here and says, you know what? It's good to just shy away from it. uh, so why is it, by the way, that here he shies away from this? How we passed in the beginning. Anybody have any idea? So the answer is, because sapek brachot le'akel. When we have a doubt about blessings, we prefer not to bless. It's a machloket. This is the reason why he kind of shies away from it. So basically, right, the way he's telling you here is that, if you really want, you can bless. But you know what? It's kind of like a good idea to avoid it if you can. Maybe it's better to avoid it. Okay, so I guess we can just do on those four things, and forget about the rest. You know, Dayenu, that's enough for us. Let's see what Mishnah Berurah says. Let's see what he has to say. Oh, look what it says, right? So it says Mishnah Berurah, the Achronim wrote that the custom is like the first opinion. Oh, okay. That's very interesting. Wow. V'chen mistaber, he says that's the way it seems more reasonable, more logical. Anyway, it is what it is. I personally would be inclined to avoid this because of the doubt involved. Probably better to avoid it. Okay, but the one who blesses, for sure, he has what to rely on. It's not a blessing in vain. He has what to rely on. But when in doubt, throw it out. So that's the best policy. That's it. Okay, great. So I think we're going to the next chapter. Yeah, we're done with this chapter. The Gomel chapter. Yeah. So we'll go to Yud. I'm sorry, not Yud. We'll go to Reish Chaf. Getting close to Shabbat. Not very far at all. Only 20 chapters. Wow. There you go. That's the thing, when you're consistent, you get a lot done. That's the thing. That's why, I want you guys, I want you to show up every night. When you come every night, you get a lot done like that. But when you skip days, one day here, one day there, one day you're here, one day you're there, you miss a lot of Torah like that. You know what your Torah becomes like Swiss cheese. It's like a lot of holes in there. Rav Shach used to say, "Alav Shalom." If you learn every day, one day you'll be gadol. One day you'll be a big chacham. But you gotta learn every day. Don't skip days. Unless you need a gomel, right? Because you're sick, lo aleinu, right? I'm not talking about that. If you need to say gomel, I understand. You're sick, lo aleinu. We're not talking about that case. Hashem should give us good health, all of us, Bezat Hashem, all of us, good health. And all right, we'll leave it at that. So going to Reish Chaf. Here we go. So says the Torah, "Haroeh chalom benafsho agumara." This is also an interesting and important, right, chapter. It's very common, very practical. This happens all the time. So what is he saying over here, right? הרואה חלום בנפשו עגומה, לייטה שלושה דרכה מלא ולמה באלפיו חלמתה ואחזי. So he says, right, if you saw a dream, okay, and you're up, like you're disturbed by the dream, it disturbs you. So that's not a good sign, right? You're kind of like shaken up by that dream. It shook you up. That means it was like something serious there. They usually, in dreams, they don't shake you up unless there's something like really, something crucial there. That means they're coming to warn you about something. Like you're getting like a warning sign. So what do you do in a case like that, right? You bring three people, right, who are your friends. Three friends, three people who like you, right? Don't bring people who dislike you. Don't bring those guys. You don't want those guys. Okay, so we'll understand why that is, right? So what do you do, right? You tell them, "Oh yeah, I saw a good dream. Let me tell you about my good dream." Right? And they answer you, "Yes, yes, it was a good dream." In other words, they try to like confirm, right, that notion that it's a good dream. right? So there's a whole, if you look in your prayer books, right, you'll see that this is like a whole ceremony that we do, with three people. It's all written in the Siddur. You can check it there. What is that called? Hatavat Halom, right? In Hebrew, right? Hatavat Halom. Okay, so what does that mean, right? That basically they're coming to like tell you it's going to be a good dream. So why is that, right? Because the Chazal told us the dream goes according to the interpretation. You know what I mean? So even if it was a shake up dream, you got shook up by the dream, it was a little bit frightening or something. So the way to fix it up is to say it was a good dream. In other words, it has to be interpreted in a positive manner because it goes according to how you interpret it. You know? So this is what we try to do over here, right? We try to reinforce this notion of positivity for the dream. That's the whole objective over here. That's what the tour says, right? Well, right? Where is this coming from? Also in the Gemara, right? The Nun Hey Amud Bet over there in Brachot. Over there, by the way, in the last chapter in the Brachot, it talks about all kinds of issues with dreams. A lot of information there about all kinds of dreams. So whoever is into dreams should read that chapter in Brachot, right? He's going to learn a lot of things over there.
I'm
If you,
always dreaming.
I'm sorry.
I'm always dreaming.
Yeah, well, I was gonna single you out. I was gonna say this chapter is for you. But I didn't want to embarrass you, but now you embarrassed yourself, so I'm not worried now.
Today I dream about my brother and my brother dream about me. So
Oh
that
boy,
was
okay.
strange.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
interesting. Exactly. That's a good point you mentioned that. Why? Because, right, that I want to tell you a couple of things about that. That when we say, right, that the dreams affect people, you know, it really affects not other people, only affects you. You're the one who had the dream. So you're the one who's got to really be concerned. But if you dreamt about other people certain things, it's not so much a concern like that, because, you know, if they want to warn somebody about something, they come to him. They don't come to his friend. You know what I mean? That's not the way it is. So therefore, the dream really concerns you more than your friend. It's an interesting concept there. Yeah, it's powerful stuff or whatever. There's all kinds of things about dreams, all kinds of interesting things. I just saw in the Zohar today, it says there, if you see the letter Tet in a dream, it's a good sign. Don't ask me. If you see the letter Tet. Okay. So anyway, right, there's all kinds of things. But anyway, right, that's the thing. So it says Bet Yosef, right? It brings a Gemara. Katvu Tosot, it brings a Tosot there. Sheva zimin ligzeru ale kol kach lachash v'yesh that I just want to tell you guys, by the way, before we go on, that we learn a lot of these things, concepts about dreams from Yosef HaTzadik, with the dreams that he had with the butler and the baker, right? Those two guys when he was in prison, So we learn a lot of those things from there. These concepts about dreams from that story there. A lot of things, by the way, in the Zohar, he points out about that passage, that story. There's a lot of deep stuff going on there, with those dreams there that they had, these two guys. So, whoever wants to learn about these things, gotta look into that stuff. Anyway, there's all kinds of also stories in the Talmud about this, about dreams, all kinds of things like that. Anyway, right. So the point is, right, we want to tell you it's a good dream, to nullify the negative effects of the dream. Okay, so then he goes on a little bit here. So interesting, right? Tosfot says that these guys, right, who come to help you with your dream, your three friends, right? So now you guys understand, right? Why should people who like you don't tell people who don't like you about your dreams? You understand why that is, right? You got the point?
They
Because the
they,
people, I'm
they
sorry,
can
yeah.
they can curse you with the by telling you that the dream means something
Right.
bad
If
is,
they give you a negative interpretation, that's gonna, it's gonna cause you a problem. Right? So that's why you don't want to have people who don't like you.
or
That's
that they're not aware of that, because sometimes I
right.
wasn't aware of many things before, and I will get scared of those dreams, thinking they were gonna come
Okay.
true. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yes. So anyway, right. That's the interest. So Tosfot says seven times. They have to say, right? It was a good dream, seven to reinforce it. כך הוא הלחש, ויש מפרשים דשבע זימין צריך לומר חלמתה וחזאי. So some say, right, it means that they have to say seven times actually, right? That it was a good, he has to say, right? The guy who had the dream, it was a good dream. He has to say seven times like that. Some say it goes on the people who interpret it. Some say it goes on the person who had the dream himself. That's what he's trying to say. וכן לענות אחריו, right? And also to answer after him, אבל רי לא היה רגיל לאומרו רק שלוש פעמים. But the Ri used to say only three times, right? Not seven times. Right? By the way, that's what we do. We do three times. עד כאן העולם נהגו לאומרו שבע פעמים. But he says, and he says the people do like seven times. כתב הקולבו, says הקולבו, ואחר כך אומרים לו, לך אכול בשמחה לחמך. And we tell him, you know what, this pasuk from Kohelet, right? Which says, go and eat your bread with joy. In other words, you've been absolved, right? You've been redeemed. Don't worry, everything will be good. Go back to normal life. That's what we tell him. Katav Ram Nishmato, right? Eden. So he says the Ram, he says, Beshem Rabbi Yuda Achasid, name of this rabbi. Right? This Rabbi Yuda Achasid, he was a very famous rabbi, this guy, right? You guys ever heard of this guy? Rabbi Yuda Achasid?
Yes.
He was one of the Balei Tosfot. But he was like a very unique, why? Because he was a big Mekubal, this guy, he was big in Kabbalah, very big. So he knew a lot of secrets, a lot of stuff. He was an incredible guy, this guy. One of the most colorful, right, personalities from the Rishonim, from that era. Anyway, right, שאין לאומרו לפי שיש בראש התיבות, אבל אומרים לו בשמחה אכול לחמך. So he says you shouldn't say this pasuk, right? Rabbi Yudah Hasid. Why? Because the abbreviation comes out to be avel, right? Which means like morning. Okay, well, all right. So then what do we tell him? He says, we tell him, Lech besimcha echol lachmecha. We do a little bit different, in order that the abbreviation shouldn't come out to be avel, right, which is morning. Okay, sounds good to me. So we'll do Shulchan Aruch, and I guess we'll stop here. It's a good place to stop. So we got to bring it up. Reish Chaf. So it says like this, right? Haroeh chalom v'nafsho aguma alav, right? If he sees a dream, okay, and it shakes him up, makes him like, nervous, whatever, disturbs him, disturbing dream. So what should you do in a case like that? Yativenu be'apen tlata derachameh, right? Bring three people who are, like you, good friends, good buddies, and that And you say like this, right? You say, yeah, I saw a good dream. And they answer him, Tavahu, but right? They say, yeah, yes, it was good. Yes. So the truth is, in the Siddur, it's a little bit longer than this, right? But this is the basic idea of what you're supposed to do. You know, there's a lot of extra stuff in the Siddur, a little bit more embellished. As usual, we embellish more these days. Nowadays, in the old days, the prayers were shorter and with sweeter, short and sweet. Okay, so thanks for coming. Be blessed with wealth and health and happiness. Chazak u'baruch, Laila Tov, and we'll see you tomorrow. Bezat Hashem. All the best.
I have a question.
Yes, my friend.
So this 72 minutes, does it include traffic?
Oh, okay. Well, this is practical stuff, right? So the answer is yes, it does. Whatever it takes, it's everything is counted.
So like for many people, the daily commute back and forth is more than 72 minutes. So they go out every day.
Right, but it's only if you're going from city to city.
So what's considered city to city? It has to be like different, like
Different town.
so if I'm going from let's say Long Island to Westchester, that's different town.
Absolutely. So if it's 72 minutes, even back and forth, then it does. Yes, you would have to make. So if you do the commute every day, you know what they say in the books how to do it?
Once a week.
Right, exactly. You do once a week, yeah.
How about going from let's say Long Island to Queens?
Same thing.
Same thing. That's also different.
Different town, yeah. But usually, Long Island to Queens is like a short drive, but unless you're going to Suffolk County, right?
So,
Great Neck, Great Neck is 15 minutes, you know what I mean?
yeah, back and forth to 72 minutes is pretty normal.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on your situation, right, that you're in, whatever. But I'm sorry, yeah.
You don't count like if you're, I don't know, like I could literally probably stay in traffic for 72 minutes just going, 4 blocks across the DC border from here, but you're not talking about that. You're talking about if I'm going to be out of town for 72 minutes, yeah?
No, we're talking about the time of travel, 72 minutes.
Okay, so that's I think what we were trying to clarify. If I go 4 blocks, but I cross the DC border and it takes me
Right.
72 minutes to do that, I still have to say Agoma?
Oh, well, yeah, that's a very extreme case. I mean,
Oh, you have never DC.
Yeah, you're right. I'm not experienced with that. But anyway, right. I mean, technically speaking, yes, that's what it would be. But we have to think about that. If 4 blocks really warrants, a Gomel prayer. I mean, it sounds a little bit, ridiculous. I mean,
But that's why I think we're just trying to kind of figure out what is
right.
what is
Yeah,
reasonable.
yeah. I mean, 4 blocks. I mean, sounds a little bit crazy, but if it's just a normal commute, yes, you do have to say. So as we said, right, if you're doing the commute every day, what you do is you do once a week Gomel. That's how you do it.
Okay, so if it's you live kind of on the border and you have to go
And
over.
honestly, I never heard of anything like this. 4 blocks taking 72 minutes. I mean,
Well, okay, I
I
may
don't
be
know.
exaggerating slightly, but only slightly because sometimes you sit at these, traffic lights for a long time when,
Yeah.
gridlock and whatnot. But if it didn't take 72 minutes to get there, then I wouldn't, or
So, if you're going back and forth in one day, right? Like in other words, the day and night, so that it does combine
okay.
the two times, But I'll tell you honestly, just thinking about it, right, that you guys mentioned this, it really depends on this, it hinges on this issue, right? If it's so extreme like that, where there's no danger involved, then you should not bless. That's the thing,
But it's
But if it's just a regular commute, just a little traffic, there's traffic everywhere, so that's normal. Nothing strange about that. And by the way, you should know that people can get into accidents in traffic, even though they're going slowly. There are accidents like that. There are pileups that happen with traffic. So there is some danger involved there, even with traffic. They say, the statistics that most accidents happen close to your house, like even before you get on the highway. So, what can I tell you? But it's only if you're going to a different town. That's the bottom line.
Thank you.
God bless. Have a good night. All the best.
Good night.
God bless.